Masechta Chullin, Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. We're starting from the second line. If the chicken's feet broke, so we said it's kosher. We're talking about we're gonna identify the place. Ahut Kuri. There was a basket that was filled with chickens that the feet were broken. They brought it before the Rava. Rava checked it out. In the juncture where all the sinews are, there are 16 sinews. You see in the bottom, but I think if you turn another picture, let me see here. Here also, that's a cow. The sinews of a cow. By a chicken, that's where it is. It's exactly this. Okay, the 16 sinews. That's where the juncture of all the sinews are. Actually, he checked if nothing was ripped, and he said it's kosher. Rav Yehuda said the name of Rav, Shmutas yad behema. If the behema, the bone of the front feet was dislocated, meaning the shoulder part was dislocated because the front feet are like the hands, right?
Okay.
So if that was dislocated,
the wings are like the hands.
It's kosher. Shmutas yadach lebehema. But if the thigh, you see, here's the front. We'll call it like the shoulder was dislocated, and here we'll call the thigh was dislocated. Then in that case, it's treifa. That's why behema. Let's go to a bird. Shmutas yadach be'if. If the thigh, meaning there's only two legs, so if the thigh was dislocated, treifa is treifa. Shmutas gaf be'if. But what about the wing of the bird? If it was dislocated, then treifa. Because the lung is protected by the ribs, and the wing is connected there as well. So a little move could puncture the lung. The lung is right connected to the bone of the wing. Shmuel says tibadik, you check the lung if there's any punctures. So did Rabbi Yochanan say you have to check the lung to see if it was punctured. Chizkiya said a bird doesn't have a lung. Rabbi Yochanan, yes, it has a lung. And it looks between it's in the place between the two wings. And it looks like the red leaf of a rose. I don't know, the petal of a rose. Okay, good. What does it mean? There's no lung for a bird. If they say there isn't at all, but we see the finish. We brought you even the exact place where it is and what it looks like. How could you say there's none? Only say the kavanah of Chizkiya meant that the oif doesn't become treif by having a puncture in the hole by the reya, like by a behema. By behema, you have a puncture, a little hole, it's going to be puzzle. In fact, how could you say that it's not going to be treif? Well, Tani Levi, those halachas of treifas that the chachamim enumerated by behema has the same dinim also by oif. And even more so, yes, Oif has an additional treifa that nishba etzem, if the skull was punctured, even if the membrane around the brain was not punctured, the membrane, it's still going to be treif. So you have an additional din of treifa. So how could you say that it's not going to be treif if it punctures the reya? If the reya had a puncture, we know all the dinim that of treifas that apply by behema applies by Oif too. And by Behema, if there's a puncture in the ray, it's treif. So by Oif should be the same. Ella, only this is how you have to explain the words of Chizkiya. Ein loy, the ray doesn't require bedika loy nafel, not when it falls from a rooftop to the ground, and not when it gets scorched in a fire. Why? Because my time, what's the reason? Because the raya by a bird, it's like encased by the ribs, so it's so fully protected. So we don't have to worry that anything happened to the lung when it fell or when it got scorched because it was protected by the ribs. So if you the Amar Rabbi Yochanan, yes, from this that Rabbi Yochanan said there is a lung, and it yeshna kiala, and it looks like a red petal of a rose between the wings. Mekal the Chizkiah over the Leslie. You can imply that Chizkiah holds that there is no such a thing as a lung. Says Gemara concludes El Abim V'Harava Mishmei Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Chanina with Varav Shal Beribi Oni. It was said in Eretz Yisrael in the name of Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Chanina about the Gadol Hader, which means the great of the generation, which was Chizkiah. Nika Shein Bakim V'Tana Goylam. It seems like it was clear that he didn't know the setup of the anatomy of chicken. But everybody asks. If you look in the Drisha, he says it doesn't make sense that Chizkiah wouldn't know the anatomy. So he explains that this was a saying that a chicken doesn't have a lung, but it doesn't. That's he heard it from his rebbes. He knew it did, but so what was pshat? The pshat was that it doesn't.
It's so protected. You don't have to worry
It's so
about
protected. It's nothing, and it's small. The Chassam Sofer says that it's tiny. That the Reya of Baya Behema has full of sections. You remember 3 lobes, 2 lobes, and the bottom 2 big lobes. By the Reya of a chicken, no lobes, no sections. It's a little tiny thing. So that's why it's as if it's not there. But not that Chizkiah didn't know about it. It's ridiculous to say that. The dislocation of the thigh by a chicken is kosher. So he's Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, said to his father, Rav Huna, the husband of Pumbedisa, the Chachamim who came from Pumbedisa, Amru, they said that Rav Yehuda Mishmei Rav Hama, that Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav said, Shmutas Yarach Treiva, that a dislocation of the thigh by a chicken, by a hen, is treif. So how did Rav Huna himself say it's kosher? Amalei, he said in the name of Rav, Amalei, Bri, my son, nada ufashta. You should know there's many different currencies by river. Each one has its own minig, and that's that place at the halach that is treif. But we hold it's kosher. Also, Rabbi Abba Ashkechel, Rabbi Yimir, Rabbi Abba, the Kabbadik B'Tzem Sagidin. Rabbi Abba found Rabbi Yimir checking out a chicken by the juncture of the sinews. You remember I told you there's 16 sinews, and he was checking them if any of them are torn. What do you have to bother yourself to check if it's ripped? But even if it's dislocated completely, forget about it. The whole thing is dislocated, you say it's kosher.
This is all for carbonates, though, not kosher for eating.
For eating.
Today's chickens, you start.
We don't even check. I don't know if they check the sinews by the leg.
Check the whole
it's not, no, by the leg. They can check where it's leaking from the blood by the shechita itself, but nobody goes and cuts the chicken, the legs, the foot, by the foot to see if the sinews are. I don't know. I don't know that they check these things. I don't know. That's really okay. Anyway, so he says, "Why'd you check? Even if it's dislocated, it's kosher." Amalei, Rabbi Yimir Bar Abba said, "I know of Mishnah which says that if the bird is treif, if the sinews are torn, a behema that the foot was cut from the knee downward, then it's ksheira. But if it's from the knee upward, psula. So too, if they removed the whole sinews, right? The behem is treif. And I've said about it, even by Eif, if the juncture of all the sinews were removed, it's going to be treif. Says you have a contradiction Rav on Rav, because here Rav says that that the gidim, meaning the sinews, were cut, right? It's treif, and here we said if the yerach, the thigh, was dislocated, the upper bone, it's ksheira. So it's like a steer. What's going on? Is it treif or it's kosher? Ishtik. He kept quiet. I'm sorry, who was it? Rabbi Abba kept quiet. Rabbi Abba said to Rabbi Yimir Bar Abba, Dilma Shanila. He says, maybe you can be mechalik by shmutel lechatlucha, between something that's dislocated to something that's cut. Something that's dislocated is kosher. it doesn't have as bad an effect as when the sinews are cut.
Severe.
It's not as severe. He said, maybe that's my svar. Rabbi Abba said to Rabbi Abba, are you now explaining as if you're coming up with a svara, your own svara, the difference? Why it's not a contradiction, because where Rav said it was kosher, it was dislocated, and where Rav said it's possible because it was cut, and cut is more severe. So that's not you, Chatucha, that we find that Rav said it explicitly himself, that shmuta, if it's dislocated, it's ksheya, Chatucha psula. Be'al tisma, and you shouldn't wonder by the thigh, how could it be, if it's dislocated, it should be more lenient than something that's cut. Well, I mean, something is dislocated as if the whole thing is not there. We learned before, you can't compare one part of a body, of a oif or a behemoth, that it's treif, and say, oh, just like this part of the animal's treif, this part will also be treif. He says, because when you cut on the bottom of an animal, or you cut up by the thigh, from the knee and upward, so by a behemoth, which one is more severe? Where would you say cannot live?
Probably lower.
You would say higher. If it was cut higher, it probably won't live. But it's the reverse. You cut lower, it won't live. You cut really high, it could live. Right. It could live. So you said that's what you want to brought before. You can't compare one limb to another. The halacha of treifus. Each limb is different. So you want to kisol Rabbi Abba. When Rabbi Abba went up there, he saw Ashkechil Rabbi Zayda the Yasmi Kama. He found Rabbi Zayda that he was sitting, and he said, that the dislodging of the thigh by a chicken is treif. So Rabbi Abba said to Rabbi Zayda, I swear, he says, that Rabbi Zayda from the day that Rav came to Eretz Yisrael and I remained in Bavel, Havalam Pischem Peh Kamed Ravuna. I asked Oshilne. I was required, and I needed to go before Avono Oshilne, and we asked him, what does he hold? And he said to us, that the dislocating of the thigh by a chicken is kosher.
But a wing makes it also.
The wing, okay. Because it's connected to the lung, and it could have punctured the lung. So that's why they say they should even check the lung. I found I also found Rav Yimir Rababa who was sitting and checking a chicken, the sinews of the chicken if it was cut. Actually, and I asked him, doesn't Rav hold this that Rav Huna had said in the name of Rav Shmutz Yerech Be'ayiv Ksheya, that even if it was dislodged, the thigh was dislodged from its place by a chicken, he said it's kosher. So for sure, if it's cut, it should be kosher. Why are you checking if it's cut? He said to me that I know of an open Mishnah, a behemoth that its hind legs, the back legs, was cut from the knee and downward, ksheya. But if it's from the knee and upward, psula, it's puzzle. And so too, a behemoth that the sinews, those, I think by a behemoth it's less, but it's thicker sinews. And so too by if it was removed, it's psula. So he says befeish puzzle. So he said to me, you have a statement from Rav and Rav, because he said when it's dislocated, you said it's kosher. But when it was removed, when it was cut, you're checking for cut sinews, and if it's cut, it's treif. Why? Dislocating is even worse. Ishtik. He kept quiet. Who kept quiet? Rabbi Yirmiyah. Actually, the same thing. Maybe Rav was being differentiating between dislocation, that he said it's going to be kosher, to cutting, it's going to be treif, a puzzle. What are you then coming to explain me how Rav holds in each place? Rav himself said that this don't explain me what Rav said. Rav explained it himself. Shmuta, if it was dislocated, he said Ksheira, Chatucha, and if it was cut, Psula. So you see, Rav had differentiated between dislocating, that it's going to be dislodging, it's going to be kosher, and by a cut in the sinews, it's going to be treif. But you, what did you hear when it gave to this halacha? So they asked Abzeda, what did you hear? So Abzeda said, Hachi Amar Abchia. So did Abchia Ravashi say, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Shmutas Yarch Le'oif Treifa, that the dislodging of the thigh by a oif is going to be treif. Chein Amar Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Idi Amar Rabbi Yechon Shmutas Yarch Le'oif Treifa. So did Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Idi say in Rabbi Yechon's name that the dislodging of the thigh is going to be treif, the thigh of a bird. Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Idi L'malu Hav Rabbi Yechon Liasa the Oiriba Chavra Basar Lehatera. If Rabbi Yechon would have been in the place where all his friends had paskin that it's kosher, loy pachis, he wouldn't go and argue with them. He would agree with them that it's tahir. Rabbi Chanina had said in the name of Rabbi Shmutas Yarach B'Meir Ksheira that the dislodging of the thigh of a bird is kosher. And Rabbi Chanina had a hench, that its thigh was dislodged, and they brought it before Rabbi V'Tidoloi. And Rabbi said, you're allowed to eat it. Rabbi Chanina took his hand and he preserved it. He wanted to stay stay preserved so he could show everybody. And he would show everybody this oif that he preserved. Halacha l'talmidim, this halacha to his talmidim, if the thigh was dislocated by a chicken, it's going to be kosher. And he was showing, you see this chicken that's dislocated the thigh? Zayhitali Rabbi, you should know. Rabbi is the one, that's why he preserved it, to show all his talmidim. This is what Rabbi said, it's mutter. Nevertheless, let's hilchasa kechol hanishmaitz. The halacha is not so. It's not going to be kosher. Elakiha. Only the halacha is going to be like the following. The shol Rabbi Yisrael ben Ha'arayah as Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. K'teidas kana bekama. When the trachea, the windpipe, if a puncture doesn't make a treif, but how much of a hole does it have to have that it should be considered as treif? Amaloi Mishnah Shleina Shanina. We learned the open Mishnah. Ad Kesa Italki, till the size of this coin that's called Italian Isser. Amaloi Sav Yisrael Noharai said, Aloi Rachel Achas, Hois Mishkonaseino. There was this, how do you say, a young Shepsela? EWE.
Oh, yeah.
A sheep, but there's this one, you in our neighborhood, Shenikna Kanashala, that the windpipe was cut out, had a big hole. Basla Krumim Shalkana. And they took this, reeds, and they covered up the place of the hole. And it was healed and it lived. Amaloi. So if it lived, how could you say it's treif when it has such a big hole? Amaloi says, this is what you're relying on from this, that they covered up that hole. So how could you say it shouldn't be treif? The halacha was spread out through Klal Yisrael. That dislodgement of the thigh by a bird is treif, and you can't argue on it. But and there was a hen that Rabbi Shimon Chalafta had, that the thigh was removed. And they made like a splint out of reeds for the thigh to put it back in place. So they put a splint and it lived. So how could you say it's treif? You see that it lived and you still paskin it's treif. It was able to live. What could you explain there in those cases? It only lived within 12 months, but then at the end of 12 months it died. It was within 12 months that it was healed, but it died before the end of the 12th month. Rab Shimon Chalafta was known to be somebody who made experiments. So he made an experiment to prove, he wanted to prove Rabbi Yehuda wrong. He did some action, like see, lights Rabbi Yehuda, to take it out from the heart of Rabbi Yehuda, to go against his shita. Rabbi Yehuda would say, if the big wing was removed, then the chicken is puzzle. So Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta had a hen, a chicken, and which the big wing was removed. And not only the big wings, he also took off all the feathers next to the skin.
Right.
What happens? It's cold, it's not going to survive. So what did he do? He did an experiment. Even without its wings, he wanted to see if he can make it live.
Right.
He put it next to the oven or by the oven. And he put it like a coppersmith's beggar over it to keep it warm. He bundled it up. The gidler can fire and look. And it grew wings better than the first ones. So here he proved that even when the wings are taken apart, it should be kosher. Says the Gemara B'Dilma Kasava. So how do you, so it's not treif, right?
Yeah.
Says Gemara, how could you prove that this pula is not treif? B'Dilma Kasava Rabbi Yehuda treif mashbachas. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds that it could get better within the 12 months, but it cannot last. It dies before the end of the 12 months. No. When do you say it would die before the 12 months? If you're saying other parts of the body makes up for what's missing. Here, the part that was missing came back. But that same limb that made it treif, it doesn't make sense to say that it won't live to the end of 12 months. When do you say it won't live to the end of 12 months? Because you have something else compensating from the body for what's missing. But here we're talking about that thing that was missing grew back. So why would I think it wouldn't live now for 12? And you said it grew back even better than the first ones. I'm not going to say it's not going to live till the end of 12 months. Now it grew back. Maybe it'll live much longer. So therefore you can answer. Yeah, but you can't make a but you can't make a raya of that. It's only within the 12 months. We're not doing a compensation. We're saying the thing that was missing grew back and even better than before. Says
it's not worse. It's better.
It's better. Says Gemara. So what was the story that Shimon asked him at the bottom? You said that he was experimental. So where do we see that? What's the case that you see that Shimon ben Chalafta was experimental? It says in the pasuk, Leich el Namala, go to the ant. Atzel, you lazy chveisos. Look at the ways of the ants, and then you become wise. They don't have a chief, shaita, anybody watching overseeing them, umayshal or king. Tachin bakayitz lachma, and look, they prepare food in the summer. So Rav Shimon Chalafta said to himself, look, now I'm going to test it out. You'll see from this story that he was experimental. Let me go and I'll see if they don't have a king. He went in the time when it's very hot, in Thomas time. And he placed his cloak over the nest of the ants, because the ants like shade; they stay inside. One of them came out, one of the ants, from the ground. He put a simon on that ant to remember where that ant is. Now, that ant went back in, and he told all his friends. Nafal Tula, he says, look, he let his friends know, hey, a shade fell upon us. Nafkivasu. They all came out. All the ants now came out from the hole.
Right.
Outside. Dalia Legline, Nafal Shimsha. Immediately, Rav Shimon Chalafta took off his cloak from there, and the sun started to shine. Nafal Alei Vekatle. All the other ants attacked it and killed it. So Rav Shimon Chalafta says, Shmamina, Les Lo Malka. Here we have proof they don't have a king. Because the Islu, if they had a king, they wouldn't have to first ask the king for permission. How did they, right away when they came out and the sun came, They attacked that ant that gave them the good news and killed it without asking. It was so fast. I'm like, you don't have proof. Maybe the king was right there. He said, kill it.
Yeah.
Or you could say, or you could say that they had already reshus. It's a known rule that someone, this is one of the rules. If your guy tricks a fellow,
Kill him.
Kill him. Maybe it was between the kings, between one king and between kings. Like it says in the Shaftin, by Yisrael. In those days, there wasn't a king by the Yisrael. Ish Ayash Bein of Yasa. Every person, what was right in his eyes, he did. Rather, you have to rely on Shlomo HaMelech, who said that ants don't have a king. You have to rely on it. You can believe in Shlomo HaMelech. Rav Huna said,
No, okay, no problem.
Rav Huna said, similar teifa. What's a similar for teifa? Shnei Masachich, that it has to live 12 months. Basically, in fact, Gemara Kasha, similar teifa, kol sheina yeledes. We learned the similar for teifa, that it can bear children. That if it's getting better and better, then it's kosher. But if it's getting weaker and it's deteriorating, then we know it's treif. Rabbi Yoima, similar teifa shleishim yoyim. The similar for teifa is 30 days. So where do you get the 12 months? Here, all these three opinions have no 12 months. You have either it can bear children, or if it's withering away, it's treif, or the 30 days. There are many treifas, there are many, they said to Rebbe, there are many that last 2 or 3 years. Rebbe says treifa cannot live more than 30 days. The other Tanaim say that can live 2 or 3 years. But there's no Tana that holds like a Huna that you live till 12 months, still was stuck. Where's that opinion? Says Gemara Tanoyi. There's a machlokes of Tanoim in this. How much time does a treif have to live to be able to still be called treif? The time we learned in the Maraisa, Ubugolgelis. That's the skull. That it's if it's in a tent, a dead man's skull, then everything in it is treif. But he says, what kind of a piece that's missing that should make it ois skull, that it has a hole that equals to the bit that you would drill into the skull. There's a story in the city of Imbol. Google that there was a skull that was missing the size of a drill bit, I'll call it, and they put a dry gourd in the place where the hole was, and the skull, and this person lived. It was summertime. But immediately when the winter came with that big hole, it sure dies right away. The halacha is that a treifa could bore children, and it could even get better. And it's not like those two opinions that said that if it cannot bore children, it's only if it bores children, it's not treif. It's not true. And it's not like the opinion that says only if it's withering away, it's treif, because it could get better within the 12 months.